How would you like to have more free time, make more money, and have more fun doing it? That is what we're going to discuss today with my friends from Superpowers. And this is one of my favorite topics, which is really a way to get you doing as an entrepreneur, an investor, doing the things that you do best and letting somebody else do the things you don't. And while doing that, actually making more money. So today we're going to discover just how to do that. I will share some of my own personal experiences with it. And we have two of my good friends, Steven Neuner and Ryan Cassin. Ryan, welcome to the Wealthability Show.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here. Thank you, Tom.
So if you would, they've just come out with their new book, Superpowered. If you will, and where you talk about allowing people by using personal assistants to actually use their superpowers. How'd you get into this? I mean, I know you, Steven, but I'm curious as to how you got into this whole topic in the first place.
Well, I would love to say that it was a pre-thought out game plan, but I was the last to sign up for a superpowered assistant. Let's put it that way. I joined Strategic Coach early in my insurance business, and we were seeing so much fruit from a lot of the learning that we learn in Coach. And as I continue to unlock growth, there was one area where, despite the progress, I resisted. And that was them saying that I should hire what they call a strategic assistant. And so I just resisted. And that resistance really continued to create friction in the business. And eventually my team staged an intervention. And they said, look, you're the bottleneck on everything. We love you, but we're not hiring another person for this company until you get some help. And so they auditioned for a team member. We ended up having an amazing partnership that was truly transformational, that led to a lot of my entrepreneur friends saying, I want a Fern. That was her name, Fern Knable. And I want a Fern. How did you get her? They were so curious. And so we started mentoring executive assistants. And the first executive assistant, first entrepreneur we helped was my good friend and business partner here, Ryan Cassin. And I'll let him tell the rest of the story.
Yeah. I took a very different tack, by the way. First time I went to Strategic Coach, and the first time they mentioned the idea of a strategic assistant, I said, let's do it. Let's jump in head first. I want to get the most out of this learning and this experience. And a strategic assistant was a linchpin to it. And I think it's because, and we co-authored this book with Shannon Waller, who leads the team success program at Strategic Coach. And we've all sort of seen entrepreneurs who are stuck on this seesaw between prioritizing freedom in their business and sacrificing the growth that they need, or prioritizing growth and sacrificing the freedom that they became an entrepreneur to go get. And so through my assistance learning and our relationship together, what Steven helped us learn and develop and come up the learning curve very quickly, I was able to get freedom and growth. And so the story goes that Steven and I exited our businesses about the same time. And as we were thinking about what was next, we had this realization that we could help other entrepreneurs go on this journey as well. And so we're really excited to share what we've learned in this book. The promise is, this is the secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10X their impact, and have more fun in work and life. And that's certainly been our experience. And I would love to say that it was me and Steven and Shannon who had this brilliant idea and came up with this book. But in a lot of ways, it was written by the folks we work with at Superpowers, the stories that we've seen, the unlocks that we've witnessed from folks who've brought this key hire into their lives and are experiencing freedom and growth.
I love that. So let's start with some of the basics here. We've already today, we've heard the term executive assistant and personal assistant. Would you tell us what a personal assistant is, and then talk about an executive assistant? Because I see them as very different roles.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe there's a third option here too, the entrepreneurial executive assistant that we talk about in the book that I think blends some of those two sides of the house, right? But a conventional executive assistant, what a lot of people think about, and even that, I think there's a lot of confusion because there's virtual assistants, there's the classic idea of a secretary, and then a truly executive assistant. The way we envision that is somebody who helps you get more leverage and capacity in the things that you're already doing that are in your unique ability, the things that only you are the right person to do in the business, the things that feel more like play than they do work, right? They come naturally to you. And then all of the other things that come across an entrepreneur's plate that are the low leverage, call it $25 an hour activities, that's where an executive assistant steps in and helps facilitate the next steps with members on the team, helps expedite and complete projects on their own, right? They're that counterbalance to help you stay in your unique ability and they focus on the rest. With a personal assistant, it's a much broader view in our experience. It's been all of the things that certainly happen outside of work. But if you think about an entrepreneur, what's unique is that work and life blend in a very hard to disentangle sort of way, right? It's almost impossible to tell from 1 minute to the next if you're in personal life or you're in entrepreneurial life, because both are pretty much 24 hours a day. And so that's where we think an entrepreneurial executive assistant understands that. They understand the personal side and they're willing to help and put an oar in the water there, but they also understand the business side. They know your team, and that's where they want to help you get leverage in your work life as well.
Yeah, so I'll share. So I have a personal assistant. You both know her because you've dealt with Irene.
She's amazing.
And anybody who's dealt with Irene says the same thing. She's amazing. They love her. And someone will say she's really persistent, which she is. And some people will say, just like you said about your assistant, I'd like an Irene. I'm going, you cannot have her. In fact, my wife told me years ago, she goes, if Irene goes, I go. That's how important she is. And so I want to talk about that personal assistant because we've actually, and some of my clients are probably listening, but I've actually made a decision and shared it with my business partner that I want to make sure that every one of our clients at our CPA firm has a personal assistant, because we find it's very difficult to get information if you don't have a personal assistant. And it's just it's such a waste of time. My Irene, my personal assistant, it is a blend. So she takes care of, my business travel and my personal travel. She takes care of, if now I don't often do this, but literally if I need her to pick up my laundry at the cleaners, she will pick up the my laundry at the cleaners. Now I try not to do that kind of stuff. But at the same time, she understands her job is to free me up so that I can do my job. And that is her job. And she really understands that. And she anticipates that. She continues to focus on that. She is not an executive assistant. So that's actually, I have found that's a very different role, because an executive assistant is very much involved in the business itself and less for the person. So the first question here then is, Steven, how do you determine if you need a personal assistant, or do you just assume that all entrepreneurs need a personal assistant?
Tom, what I would say is, in my experience, as you know, my first business was insurance, right? So I only served entrepreneurial clients there. The other industries, my entire career has served entrepreneurs. What I've noticed that the entrepreneurs that are truly having the highest levels of freedom and growth, they have they have someone that's supporting them in both manners, whether that's two people, one people, a combination thereof. I think that the people that are living, the most attractive entrepreneurial life, where they're truly getting out of their entrepreneurial journey, the reason why they started the business, they have someone behind them. And that's why we called the book A Secret, right? The secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10X their impact, and have more fun in work and life. It's because a lot of times the assistant, they don't demand any attention. They don't demand, and so what's sort of hidden behind these really great entrepreneurs we all admire and respect, and seem to be living the best lives, both personally and professionally, they have someone that's hidden, right? Like hidden right in plain sight. And so that's why I think what we're doing in this book and drawing some of these distinctions and helping people get clarity is so important, because we make what's sort of invisible visible to people, to give them handles to start working towards what their version of success looks like.
So let's focus a little bit on the personal assistant if we can.
Yeah.
Let's start there. We can get to the executive assistant. So what are the skills? What are the skills, and what are you looking for in a personal assistant? Here's the great thing that I think about personal assistants is it used to be you had to have a full-time personal assistant. They were expensive. They had to be there. But virtual assistants came in. You can get an assistant that works 5 hours a week for you. It's so inexpensive now, and it's so easy, particularly with your company Superpowers. Just go to Superpowers and get your assistant that's already trained. But what are those skills? So you're obviously helping develop personal assistants. What are the skills that you're looking for, and what are the skills are you training?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually think baked into there is one of the things that we talk about in the book. We have what we call the 3Ps framework for looking for your right assistant, right? And so, because there is this world of virtual assistants, you can go on, we all know the Upworks of the world and these, online talent marketplaces where you can go to, get your $4 an hour assistant, right? But I think, with all of that accessibility and with all of that availability, it's actually made the process of finding the right person more complex, more challenging. There's just this sort of difficulty with all those options, right? And you get analysis paralysis. And so we look at it 3 ways, right? There's a project assistant. And so that's sort of like your part-time or full-time hourly kind of, person that is editing your podcast, right? Or updating your website, creating some graphics, clear objectives. They're specialists. And those are really your lowest cost, easiest to engage type talent, right? But oftentimes that looks like a virtual assistant. And then similarly, we also see virtual assistants as like process assistants, right? So you've got project assistants, process assistants. That's things that are well-defined, well understood in your business that you just need consistently a member of the team to execute on, right? Very clear inputs, very clear outputs, easy to measure, and that person can be hired, again, at a very cost-effective rate. And then what we're talking about with the personal assistants and the executive assistants is proactive, right? This is a person who there's high levels of relationship. And I think that's the most important piece that is at the foundation of a successful relationship with this person is deep levels of investment in the relationship. And they have a good understanding of you so they can be proactive. The way that we talk about it early on is sort of a 30, 60, 90. Like, what should you expect at the beginning of this relationship? In the first 30 days, this person is just beginning to get to know you. What are your preferences? Who are your family members? What's your routine? Do you like to fly at the front of the plane, or are you looking for basic economy for the cheapest one? You don't care, right? Like just the who you are and what your preferences are. And then the second stage is understand you. And so at 60 days, we're looking for that common vocabulary to be built. So when you say email Steven about that one thing, your assistant knows who Steven is and what that one thing is, and you're beginning to have that lower friction, easier communication. And then the real key is anticipate you. At 90 days and beyond, we expect you to be having this relationship, to have poured into it enough, to have enough structure and knowledge and understanding between you that your assistant's looking around the corner. They know your preferences. If your flight gets canceled and you're in a sales meeting you can't get out of, he or she already proactively knows exactly how to set you up for success in unexpected situations, right? And so that's kind of how we think about it. 3Ps, and then the 30, 60, 90 to begin to develop that relationship.
No, I like that. So I'll share. I went through several assistants learning this. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to us have done that. And they got progressively a little better because I was willing to spend progressively a little more money, frankly. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest mistakes was underspending on my assistant, because I had a certain price range in mind. It's not that, to me, I still look back, I'm going, it wasn't that cheap. But a good assistant is, somebody that you're talking about that is not typically your $4 an hour virtual assistant. You want somebody like a Fern or an Irene, you're going to pay them real money. Okay. And I will tell you, they're worth it. So what I found is that I hired somebody, she would never anticipate. And that you use that word, and that's the word I used. And so when we hired Irene, and she's been with me well over 10 years. But when we hired Irene, that was actually the word, will you anticipate, give us an example of, in the interview, I said, give us an example of when you anticipated what your boss, needed. And she's terrific at that. She's just like you say. So my flight gets canceled, she's on it. Okay. And she's texting me. So we actually have a rule I have a rule with Irene, and that is if I text her, it's urgent. If I email her, it's not during normal course of the business day. So after hours, I don't text her unless it's really urgent. But if it's urgent, then after hours, and honestly, after hours on vacation, doesn't matter. If it's urgent, it's urgent. And there are just some things that are that way. And of course, we balance that. It's taken some time. We figured out how to balance that relationship, because one of the challenges with a personal assistant is they can get so involved that they really have no time of their own, and they can feel very frustrated. And Irene got to that point at one point, and we had to set some very strict rules as to when she's on and when she's not on. And she still violates those rules, but as long as I don't violate the rules, I'm okay with that. Right. Yeah. It's because I do think there's a responsibility of the entrepreneur to not violate the rules that you set with your personal assistant. One time when I was doing a interviewing personal assistants, I always ask the question, is there anything you won't do? And, normally you get, I won't babysit, or I won't take out the trash. And I actually I won't have sex with you. And I'm going, whoa. What happened there? That you actually feel like you had to say that. I'm just going, oh my heavens. That's like, whoa, that was not what I was thinking about. But talk about, Stephen, if you can, a little bit about this sense of anticipation and anticipating, because I do think that is, to me, that's the key. That's been the difference maker with Irene, is that she anticipates what I need.
Yeah, well, and I think first off, maybe time that we update the questions. We're in a new world. So that would be a shocker of a response. But yeah, on anticipation, one of the things we talk about in the book, and what Ryan was mentioning, is this crawl, walk, run process. And you said it so well. It is an investment. So certainly you need someone that's core values aligned, that you can trust, right? You need them to be capable, because you could have someone that's a really great person, your values aligned, but if you just don't trust them because they're not capable and competent, you're not going to get to the point where you share the things that could really move the needle for you. And so once you've kind of cleared those hurdles, then it becomes more of like that. As that trust builds, it's letting them into more of your world. And so the more you let them into the world, and there's oftentimes like a resistance to that. We find a lot of times with entrepreneurs where it's like, no, like I just want my business supported or whatever. And so they miss the transformational impact of expanding that relationship. But by sharing, hey, this is where I'm going to typically procrastinate. I need help. These are areas, where, I don't want to do this. I need to get this done. I even maybe need you to sit with me so that I get it done. I need you to make me get it done, because it's that important. Having that level of authenticity and vulnerability allows the assistant to really be able to understand and support you better.
No, I love that.
And I would just add on that anticipate you piece. One of the questions that we have found to be really effective at filtering for someone who has the capacity to one day get to that level, right? Because you're hiring today, but you don't really expect that true anticipate you until at least 90 days. So there's a big gap there where there's uncertainty, it feels like. One of the things that's helped us is we create this scenario where you're literally in that sales meeting and cannot be reached at all. You're not available by phone, by text, anything, right? And your flight's been canceled and your ideal option is no longer an option. You've got two bad options. Which one are you going to, what are you going to do? Not even which one you're going to pick. What will you do? And we just leave it open-ended because the inclination very much is to say, to ignore the piece about how you can't be reached and said, well, I'll text, I'll call back to back. I'll make sure to get, your attention. And it's like, no, 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 no. What we need you to do is with imperfect information, make a decision and accept that the consequences may not be an ideal outcome, right? You're in a bad situation. You're just going to have to live into that, right? And so that's a big filtering mechanism for us to see if that gear exists, if that willingness, if that ability to go out on a limb and put yourself at risk exists in the person.
Well, let me ask the other side of that question. So how does the entrepreneur get comfortable putting themselves at risk? I mean, here's the thing, entrepreneurs, we're willing to take on any problem, we're trying to fix things all the time. So it's hard to let go. How do you convince entrepreneurs to let go of that so that somebody else can make that decision and that you don't get upset with them for making the decision?
So we thought we were starting a coaching business for executive assistants who help entrepreneurs. We ended up starting a coaching business for entrepreneurs who need executive assistants. So much of it is helping the entrepreneur grow alongside the executive assistant in this relationship. And so there's a lot of structure to it. You're absolutely right. That is one of the many complexities of the relationship. It's the letting go. It's the having the trust. You can bring some structure to that, but it's also helping the entrepreneur understand how to have crucial conversations with their executive assistant, how to be better about offering feedback proactively. And this is one of the things that I wasn't good at initially is I would let these little things pile up and I would have inventory of them and never communicate them to my executive assistant. That takes more time. That takes more relationship building. I want to go, go, go and move fast. The whole point of having this person is to be able to move faster after all. And so by not investing in the relationship intentionally early on, what I would end up doing is in a breaking moment, something that finally put me over the edge, unleash a tsunami of feedback of all of the things that were in my mind. And obviously that was really counterproductive to us building the relationship. So it's a growth thing. It's a different relationship than anyone else you have in your business or your personal life.
So you mentioned structure and I mentioned rules. So Steven, what are some of the, when you think of that structure, what are you thinking about as far as what types of rules or structure you put in your relationship? Because there have to be boundaries. And there has to be some structure and they need to be instructed on, okay, this is not okay. How do you go about that?
Well, I think that's a great question. And what I would say is that, the way that the way that you approach it is really, really masterful. It's like setting those communication rules, not just timing, but how do you want to be communicated? What's the best way to receive communication? What's the best way that you give, feedback? Those may not be the same. The more that we can establish those early and bridge those, the more likely you're going to have success in the relationship. And you're going to avoid those, situations where things can go sideways. The other thing is really a lot of aligning expectations, because a lot of times we meet people and they've waited so long and they're in desperation and finally they're going to make this hire and they're waiting for it to be their messiah instead of their personal assistant, right? That could really add a lot of value to their life. And so really tempering, Dan talks about the difference between the ideal, the gap and the gain, right? And we can pursue this ideal, and ideal is useful and powerful for where we want to go. But oftentimes, if we measure by the ideal, we're going to end up dissatisfied. And so we have a lot of structure that we help the entrepreneurs to actually understand, hey, are they making the right amount of progress and is it in line with where it should be? Because most entrepreneurs, they do a good job at this. They're doing it maybe every 5, 7, 10 years. I might hire 100 salespeople in a period of 2 years, depending on my business. So you don't get that institutional knowledge. So we help them frame that up, help them understand where they're at in the journey, and really reinforce that. Is this excellence or perfection that we're measuring against?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I would just add to that. What I've observed over hundreds of calls that we've done with entrepreneurs now, is that there are really three stages of the investment mindset. And we work exclusively with entrepreneurs. And so we love that people come with the investment mindset, right? But there's the, I'm going to make no investment in this, or as small investment as possible, $4 an hour, destined to fail approach, right? And then we get people at the stage where they're talking to us that they have the investment mindset about, I'm going to spend money to get this person and make the right investment because I understand how there's beneficial return on that investment. But what we really probe for on the front end before starting a relationship with somebody is, do you have the third phase of this investment mindset? Do you understand the investment of time and relationship that's going to be required so you can get the success that you're looking for in this life-changing hire if you do it right? And so that's what we're really trying to prime folks who are ready to open their pocketbooks for the first time. Have they also opened to their mind to the possibility that they're going to need to invest personally in the relationship to make it a success?
Okay. So thinking about some of this structure and thinking about some of the things they do, what do you think are maybe 2 or 3 things that an assistant can do that has the most impact on an entrepreneur and freeing up their productivity?
So I want to get Steven in here because I want to talk about the personal side as well. And he's a master of this with some of the playbooks that he's putting into place. I think to some degree that's a personal question, right? It is to the individual entrepreneur. One of the things that we see as the most, some of the most common things that we see, my inbox is on fire, my to-do list is a mess and exists in 10 different places, my calendar is double booked and I'm not showing up on time to things. I think there are definite productivity wins and reducing the amount of mental overload and clutter that you have that an executive assistant comes in on. But there are also some just basic enhancements to how you show up in your entrepreneurial journey that I think that are often overlooked that an EA will help you with. So I'll give you 2 examples. One, very common courtesy of saying, hi, Mr. Smith, Ryan is looking forward to meeting with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. at breakfast at this location. And the topic of or the agenda of the conversation is this. Please let us know if anything has changed. And I have gotten more positive feedback to those really, really, really small personal touches that feel like I'm dialed in. I'm looking forward to the meeting. The confirmation is nice, especially in this work from home, work distributed day and age. Like meeting in person is kind of an event sometimes, right? So doing those things. And then the other is a background brief. I get a ton of value out of this. I'm always meeting new people. Maybe they're going to be clients of Superpowers or they're, new introductions. And my background brief from my assistant, Leslie, is a 2-pager. Everything I need to know about that person's business, personal life, what we can find out about them on LinkedIn, quick Facebook stuff. There's so much information that's available there. She does the research and brings it to me. So I'm going in with camaraderie, ready to go. I'm going in ready to make meaningful connection because I'm able to talk to them as they are rather than learn all of that on the spot. I know Steven is sort of this Jedi master of the personal playbooks, though. I bet he could share some good experience too.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share the personal, but I got to have one, whether it's business or personal, that I just love is I call it the friendly follow-up or the friendly hassle. We're putting a sport court in at our place right now, and we had to have a septic system moved, which had to be coordinated with the county. So we had the septic, and just the follow-up to make sure everybody's on point, putting things in the right place, right time. Like just not even think about that. Know that that's all happening. Everybody has a gate code to get onto our property. Just removing those things that I used to worry about and why, especially in today's world where, sadly, people are more and more scattered, and so they struggle to follow through. Probably why it's hard for people to get you the paperwork, Tom. They're just scattered everywhere, and they can't get you something that seems so simple, right? But personally, just a few of the ways. I mean, a few of the ways that I really value the value my assistant brings to me is we have a playbook called the Better Husband Playbook, uh, and literally it is a list I've compiled of my wife's favorite restaurants, favorite musicians. Like she likes Farm to Market. She likes the new restaurant when they come out. These are her favorite places to shop. And so every month, my assistant takes time out of her month and she compiles a list of all the things that are coming up over the next 30 days. It might be interesting to my wife, might be a cool date night out, right? And I've been married 22 years, and my wife and I, one of our businesses we run together, and I want to still date her. And so that creativity and requires some work that is not on my unique ability, sort of runs me down. And so to be able to have that succinctly go through, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that. Can we line up my mother-in-law to watch the kids overnight so we can go do that? And then let her go make all of that happen. Wow. I mean, great. Valentine's Day, I get really immersed in what we're doing here today, hanging out with great entrepreneurs, talking about the future. I love it, right? I can get so immersed in the future that I miss that tomorrow's Valentine's Day. And I get shocked by it every year and I'm scrambling. Well, that doesn't happen anymore because my assistant is looking out for me and prompting me. Here are 3 things. She's been looking at this on social media, so what about this? So just feeding my creativity is really good. I do the same thing for each of my kids. It's called the Better Father Playbook, right? And so literally each of my kids, they all have their own unique interests. They're all very unique people. And, my son right now, it's Legos. And so what's the new Lego thing dropping? And, like just looking for the car show. When is it coming in town this year? Can we go to the auction, the Mecum auction? So just, again, feeding me once a month with these are things and my VIPs in my life. And then how do we make those happen? Tremendous benefit. And I could go on and on. I mean, but better friend. I've missed a friend. True story. I have friends older and younger than me, and I love that. But I had a friend that thought it was a good idea to invite all of his friends to his wedding through social media. And I wasn't on social media at the time much at all, and I missed the invitation to the wedding, and I would have gone. And so I felt terrible. So now my assistant has my list of VIPs. She goes on and she lets me know what's happening in the people I love's life. I don't have to digest all the political stuff. I don't have to digest, what everybody ate for dinner last night. But, if Tom Wheelwright celebrated a milestone anniversary and you're you're gonna hear from. I'm not gonna miss that, and I'm not gonna miss, that you guys are having a baby, that kind of stuff. So and then all of that gift giving, all of that is stuff that my assistant allows me to go in and just show up the way that I feel called to show up. I want to love people. I want people to know, that are important to me. I want them to know that they're loved. And so my assistant empowers me to do that in a really cool way.
I love that. I love that. I'd like to turn to something that's more on the pure business side here. How do you find assistants? How do you use assistants, and how do you recommend using assistants for time management? That's actually one of the biggest benefits that I found. My assistant is she's pretty strong about managing my time. And we have lots of conversations about managing time so that I can use my time better. What are your thoughts on how to use an assistant for time management?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think baked into what we see as most effective is sort of what you've embedded in your question, right? Having a lot of conversations and getting to know your preferences. And then the other thing is the entrepreneur has to be willing to let go of their calendar and has to be willing to abide by the rules that they have set for themselves. And that can be the most challenging thing, right? If you say something is a priority, is it actually a priority? When it comes to prioritizing one thing over another, including free time, by the way, free days, do you actually prioritize that, or do you let other things sort of slip in and dilute that time? One of the things that we do, because we're just such big believers in it, with the strategic coach background, is we send all of our assistants for folks who are at Coach to the strategic assistant program. So they learn the entrepreneurial time system and they help their entrepreneur implement it. Because if there's one thing that, regardless of who you are or whether or not you've, pursued some of these programs, if there's one thing that entrepreneurs are not the right people to do, it's to manage their own time. They're not good at having a good they're not practical about what can be done in the amount of time that they've given themselves. And so it shows up in broken promises or burnout, right? And you compound these bad decisions over weeks and months and years, and before you know it, you've just completely burnt yourself out. So that's something where the entrepreneur or where the executive assistant really takes the lead in the relationship, especially early on. The other piece of it that we've seen is we conduct periodic energy audits. Our assistants do of their entrepreneur. They observe, because of the close relationship, when the entrepreneur is riding high and when they're feeling low. That could be because of the time of day that they're working. It could be because of the lack of vacation or free time that they've had. It could just be because they're doing the wrong work at the wrong time of day for them. Some people are super creative in the morning. Other people are and need that time cleared. Other people love to burst into the day and talk to as many people as possible. And that's the way they express themselves. And so time management is this really complex idea between expectation setting, priorities, free days, and then also just where you naturally get your energy. And all of that comes together, I think, to define what really effective time management looks like from an executive assistant's perspective.
And the other challenge with it is that it adjusts as they go, right? So constantly realigning on it, and learning, continuing to learn, because the things, Dan has a quote, says the skills that get you out of Egypt don't necessarily get you in the promised land. And so as the business grows, where you need to invest your time is going to shift, right? You're going to grow if this relationship's going well. And so, continuously keeping that communication going. And that even goes to the free days. Like a lot of times, I know for myself personally, I thought when I finally got a day off, a free day, a true free day, I thought golf was going to be the thing that rejuvenated me. I found out that it did not rejuvenate me at all. I loved being outdoors, I learned, and I loved hanging out with people I love. And golf is a great way to spend 4 hours with people that you really enjoy, but it didn't necessarily fill me up. But so some of that's got to be continuous, like just learning and in that communication loop. And I think one thing that, whether someone's a superpowers or not, is building in time to reflect on that, whether it's quarterly or whatever, and then having that communication, because it will adjust and evolve as you go. And I think that's really important. And we just create lenses for our assistants to be paying attention. And they're in a community of other assistants that are supporting really great entrepreneurs. And so they're looking for things that maybe they wouldn't if they were just left on their own and on an island supporting one entrepreneur.
I love that. So before we wrap up, Ryan, let's go back to your comment you made at the very beginning, which is talking about an entrepreneurial assistant. Can you explain what you mean by that and how that would theoretically or practically work for an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so we think an entrepreneurial executive assistant is an executive assistant that is uniquely prepared, trained, and has a mindset to work with entrepreneurs. And so that shows up in two things. That proactive piece is really important, right? You're expected to operate independently and without the guardrails of having a large corporate organization around you and a lot of people to go sort of tug on the coattails of and ask, hey, how do we do this historically, right? You're figuring it out as you grow. The other piece is a growth mindset. And this is critically important. And it's exactly what Steven was just talking about, which is I see you today as you are, and I'm making this match with an executive assistant. I need to make sure it's successful today. But I know that if I talk to you a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, your future is bigger. Your vision is bigger. What you're accomplished is bigger. Your business is bigger. Your personal life is bigger. And we're hiring for someone who wants to go on that journey and doesn't view all those new things as scary challenges to overcome, but rather invigorating learning opportunities. That is a critical part of what it means to be an entrepreneurial executive assistant. They're going on that growth journey with you. They want to stay close. They want to continue to be poured into. The one other thing I would say is that mindset wise, one of the things we see is that a lot of people think that because it's not their unique ability. They're delegating things down to their executive assistant. I'm not good at email. I'm not good at my calendar. I'm not good at managing my to-do list. I'm going to delegate that down to my executive assistant. And I think the mindset shift is it's a delegation up. It's moving it to somebody who that's their unique ability. That's their skill set. That's what they are talented and bringing creativity and energy to. And it's just a completely different relationship you have with your executive assistant when you see it as a delegation up rather than a delegation down, because it's obviously important work. It's work you're already doing at your billable hour rate, right? So it's obviously very important to get right. Now we're going to move it up to somebody who that's their unique ability.
Interesting. So all of your discussion about an entrepreneurial assistant makes me think of Pepper Potts from Iron Man. Seriously, I mean, you look at that, you go, wow, he took his executive assistant and turned her into the CEO, and she was able to handle it. And everybody's going, wow, I'd like to have an Iron Man suit, but I'd also like to have Pepper Potts. So my final question for you is, how do you go about finding a Pepper Potts? Literally somebody who's that entrepreneurial, will take the initiative, and actually can do business stuff, not, personal stuff is great. And I think I wholly believe everybody needs a personal assistant. And I love my personal assistant. Irene knows what she's good at and what she's not good at. And she was very clear with me. And I appreciate that. Okay. So I don't give her things that I would love to give somebody, but I don't give them to Irene because her perfect role is personal assistant. So what are you looking for, and how are you finding that entrepreneurial executive assistant?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess in your Pepper Potts metaphor or analogy, that would make Steven our Tony Stark, which
There you go.
that's a high bar, but he can achieve it. I think, look, at the risk of making it sound like a bigger thing than it is, it's the truth. We have 1,000 applicants for every one match that we make. I mean, it is crazy. I would have never in a million years expected that would be the ratio. And it started, it started even higher than that, right? We got better about screening. We got better about, looking for the right people, because it is so easy to apply for roles right now in this sort of distributed remote work. It's often one click away. So one of the things that we're doing is we're looking for detail in the response initially. So we're embedding questions in the job posting that should be included in the response, right? So what's your favorite color? And if they don't mention their favorite color, they're just mass clicking to apply for jobs. And I find this, by the way, this is US based hiring. This is, international hiring. Did they read the thing and are they responding to it, right? So like you can do little things on the front end. One of the things that we've done just from a process perspective is our first interview step is an automated interview. So they're getting asked questions and then recording one-way video interviews back. And one of the things we're really looking for there, we're not learning much about the candidate, but we're learning a lot about how they present, how they showed up, how they are able to reason and think on the spot through questions, and just sort of this overall aura of professionality, right? Is this the kind of person that I would want to continue talking to? And that's actually one of the through lines of all of our interview process. And I think it's a really, really important one as people think about hiring their executive assistant, especially early on, maybe not forever, but especially early on. This is the one hire you're talking to more than anyone else possibly in your life, certainly in your business. Is this a person you would just enjoy talking to? If you pick up the phone, if you get into a Zoom, if you're trading text messages, do you enjoy interacting with this other human? Because that's a huge part of determining whether you're going to be successful or not in the hire. And then in the interview itself, it's a lot of scenario-based questions, very open-ended, design everything to leave maximum uncertainty and space for an answer. And what we have found is that there are many versions of the right answer. In fact, a lot of wrong answers can still be the right answer by virtue of what we're trying to get at. Do they take the initiative? Do they collect the information necessary? Do they network with other people in the business? How would they handle themselves in situations where there isn't someone to back them up? We see every imaginable answer. It's the creativity of each individual person coming through the door, but can they answer those questions in a thoughtful way where you could say, hey, look, I love the way you reasoned through that. It's the wrong answer. let me help you reason through it the way I see it. And they can say, oh yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Let's go that way.
That's fascinating. You know, I will just add that in my business life, Irene is the most important person in my business life. I don't work directly with my wife. I mean, we have a lot of discussions about business, but she's not my business partner. And so that personal assistant, I think you make a really good point, Ryan, that don't downplay the importance of finding the right person for this role. Because they, if you find the wrong person, it's just not, I mean, why would you want to spend that much time with somebody that you just, I mean, I interviewed one person and on resume, they looked like exactly the right person. And then I met with them going, oh my heavens, I just can't stand the sound of her voice. The voice was just grating on me. And I'm going, that was a short interview and she had all the other qualities, but the voice was like, yeah, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. Any final thoughts on that, Steven?
Well, because you mentioned voice, I heard a story this morning that I just think is just the exclamation point on this. So Elvis Presley evidently snuck into Dave Thompson's restaurant and competed in a Elvis Presley impersonator contest. Nobody knew it was him. He competed for it and he got third place. And as people are eating their steak, he got sort of like a conciliatory applause, right? It was the actual real deal Elvis Presley. And I think so often, if we're not careful looking for this role, we can settle for an imposter, like a faux freedom, almost the person, but not quite what we need. And so I think you hit it on the head. Just don't settle for anything other than the real deal.
I love it. So the company it's Superpowers. Where do we find more information? The book is Superpowered. Where do we find more information about what you guys do for both for assistants and for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So our website is superpowershq.com, and the book is available at superpoweredbook.com.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Ryan and Steven. This is a topic that's, as you both know, is near and dear to my heart. And I'm such a big believer that when we get the right people in the right place at the right time, it just frees us up, and it frees up our energy. It frees up our time. It makes us more productive, and we end up being way happier while we're spending less time, and actually way more profitable because we're doing those things that are the most profitable, not the things that are least profitable. And of course, when we do all of these things, we're, as we always talk about at Wealthability, we're always making way more money and paying way less tax. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time on the Wealthability Show. If you love this episode like I did, please mark like, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to our channel. Thanks very much.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.